Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Project Fear or Project Near, as the prospect of the UK falling out of the EU without a deal looms, Theresa May says precautions to stop supplies of medicines and basic foodstuffs running low should reassure us all. Brexiteers, though, say talk of stockpiling is scaremongering to persuade wavering MPs to back the Prime Minister's watered-down plan. Our business correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy, has visited a drugs company which has ordered in extra quantities of stock should we leave the EU with no trade agreement.
In normal times, this company stockpiles 2 months' worth of medicines, but thanks to fears of a no-deal Brexit, they're having to double their supplies. Everyone's talking about a no-deal Brexit, even the government now. What does that mean for you?
Well, a no-deal for us is almost a reality. Companies like ourselves have to prepare for the worst-case scenario and make sure that patients have the supply, the continuity of supply, both in the UK and in Europe, if there's a no-deal.
The ingredients for their epilepsy, cancer and dementia drugs are all imported, and the finished products are sold both here and in Europe. You've been doing this for a long time, this preparation. We've
had to do that because our lead times are very, very long. If you look at the work we have to do in advance of preparing, even just for some kind of stockpiling, you know, we import our product ingredients from Japan, for example. So the upstream work has taken a long time. The regulatory work has taken a long time. And even getting factories in place in Europe to be able to handle all the stock and the distribution of that stock out of Europe for Europe, all that has to be done way before the 29th of March.
The government is sticking to its line that a deal with Europe is still the preferred option. But in the last few days, ministers have admitted they're also planning to stockpile critical supplies like medicines and food in the event of a no deal and the chaos that would ensue. And that matters because 70% of the drugs we need in this country are imported, and just over half of the food we eat also comes from abroad. Some people have already started taking matters into their own hands. Tabitha is a type 1 diabetic. She normally holds 1 month's worth of supplies, but because of Brexit, she's begun stockpiling more.
Well, until 2 weeks ago, I was making jokes about insulin availability ending in the event of Brexit. But lately, the government itself is actually saying they're going to begin stockpiling medication. And I don't trust my life to them to stockpile the correct medication in the correct doses. If I don't have my insulin, I die in 2 days. It's as simple as that.
The drugs we take and the food we eat all come through ports like Dover, where even a couple of minutes' delay will bring lorries to a standstill. One of the UK's top supermarkets told this programme that while ministers were talking about stockpiling food, they haven't so far made any plans. And worst case scenario, the government hopes to simply extend Britain's leaving date beyond March next year. Siobhan Kennedy, Channel 4 News in Hertfordshire.
Well, I'm joined in the studio by the economist Andrea Hosso and from South London by Alistair Campbell, who's the editor-at-large at the New European newspaper. Alistair Campbell, let's start with you. The Prime Minister says that people should take comfort from these no-deal preparations, and the Brexit Secretary says there will be adequate food. So what are you worried about?
Well, just listening to that report, how bad and how ridiculous do things have to get before people start to realise that we are heading towards what I think could be a complete catastrophe? And the people who delivered Brexit, the politicians who made the claims that they made, the government now that has patched together this checkers deal that pleases nobody, there surely has to come a point where we start to think, hold on a minute, are we really doing the right thing here? And
right.
This is, you talked there about, is it Project Fear? This is from the mouths of government ministers now.
Right.
Now, it may be that Theresa May is trying to stoke this up so that people kind of fall for her sort of plan and think, oh, well, that sounds like it's sort of somewhere in the middle, let's go for that. But the reason this is all happening is because within Parliament and within her party, they cannot get agreement around what Brexit actually means and what it should mean for the country.
I'll come back to the idea of whether this is good or not for Theresa May in a minute, but let me just put that to Andrea Hosso. Complete catastrophe is what we're heading for in terms of things coming in, supplies coming in.
No, I really don't think so. I think there are two things to this whole matter. One is project fear, obviously. And let's think about what happened during the week before the Chequers meeting, when big companies all announced all of a sudden in unison that they were going to leave if there is no deal. Airbus was very much in the news. BMW backpedaled right away. And Airbus was very angry afterwards, saying that they helped the government selling Chequers, and still they didn't get the tender. Boy,
you think it's coordinated?
So I think it is coordinated. It is happening, but I think there is another. So that's a PR thing and we have seen waves of this happening before certain events to make a certain plan or a certain project saleable. But there is another part to it, and the other part is that referendum happened 2 years ago, and for a while I think this country believed that it would be very easy to strike a commercial deal with the EU because commercial interests are the same. And the
Brexiteers thought that.
Brexiteers said that, but not only. I think the public at large thought that it wouldn't be a difficult thing because the UK is a member of the European Union. Standards are the same right now, so it's not a remote third country. It would be quite easy to strike a deal if there were political will to do it.
And now we're seeing the reality.
I think the reality, and now I'll be very quick, in 2 years' time, and I think we could see that a year ago, that there is no political will in the EU to strike a deal. So actually, I think stockpiling, if it happens, it should have happened a lot earlier. I think it's always a good idea. I think no country should be left without any reserves.
Okay.
I think it's a very good thing.
Let me put that to Alistair Campbell. Stockpiling is a good thing, should have happened before.
I mean, the whole premise of that answer is complete nonsense. The reason why the public think that we should have been able to make a deal is because the politicians who delivered Brexit said, to quote Liam Fox, that it was going to be the easiest thing in history. We were told there was going to be no cost, there was going to be no pain, there was going to be no difficulty. And I have to say, this idea, what's happening now is that the people who got Brexit over the line, most of them running away, like Boris Johnson and David Davis, they now are looking around for people to blame for the whole thing going wrong. The European Union, I think, has been extraordinarily patient in trying to deal with a government that is divided, that is incompetent, that actually has not, in 2 years, to have a situation where it took them 2 years to get a cabinet agreement about what they were trying to do on trade, which fell apart within 2 days.
Okay.
That's not the European Union falling apart, that's the British government.
Right, let me put that back to Andrea Hosser. The Brexiteers are looking for someone to blame.
No, I really don't think so. Mr. Campbell is talking about politics and politicians. He's a politician himself. We saw very well what he was doing when Tony Blair was in power and so on. Of course, that's what he's saying. I'm not here as a politician. I'm here as an economist, and also I comment on the political side of it because
you're
interrupting me, Mr. Campbell. Please, we're not in the chambers now. No, please stop it. I would like to say I listen to you.
Let him finish, and
I listen to you, and please listen to me. Okay, that's why we are here.
Okay,
I have an opinion, and I have as much right to say it as you do. Okay?
Yes, you do.
You finish your point.
Yes, but what you do
my
is,
point is that this is about politics. This is about politics. Mr. Campbell is talking about politics. If you look at what's happening, the EU does not want to make a normal commercial deal with the UK because their political priority is to show the world that no country that leaves the European Union can get out of it in a good position and benefit from it. That's why, you know, that was quite clear. That was quite clear. And I'm saying any business that hasn't started to plan for different scenarios, which is what businesses do in normal life, has to go back to business school.
Let me bring Alistair Campbell.
Plan for all scenarios.
Okay, I promise to let you reply to that, Alistair Campbell.
Well, no, but this is, I'm afraid, what most of the people on the Brexit side of the argument do. Because it's all going wrong, they now simply denigrate the motivations of anybody who says anything. You said earlier, for example, that Airbus, so it was all coordinated. Like, we're supposed to believe you and Nadine Dorries and Ian Duncan Smith about how businesses run their businesses in the modern economy, as opposed to Airbus. These people are people making real decisions now that are going to affect jobs and prosperity in our country. I say what I say now, not because I work for Tony Blair, but because I think people like you have led the country to a precipice. You now have no idea how we're going to actually make the deals that need to be made, and therefore you're casting around to blame.
Very briefly,
Theresa May has got to stand up and actually start to lead this country in the direction it needs to go, which is not the direction towards this car crash.
Alistair Campbell, yes or no, are you stockpiling yourself? Yes or no?
No, I'm not. No,
right.
No, I'm not.
Are you stockpiling?
I always keep reserves at home at all situations, and I really don't appreciate the personal tone.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to end it there, though. Andrea Hotho and Alistair Campbell, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry, we continue the argument off John.
Now, the possibility of a no-deal Brexit is also a concern in Ireland. Government there has called the prospect Eurosceptic bravado. Ministers from the Republic have been in London as part of a British-Irish intergovernmental conference. Afterwards, the Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, said tough stance from some of those on the UK side needs to be dropped. Well, that meeting between Irish ministers and their British counterparts was the first of its kind in 11 years. The collapse of the power-sharing agreement in Northern Ireland was discussed alongside, of course, the state of Brexit negotiations. I sat down with the Irish Justice Minister, Charlie Flanagan, and I began by asking him if Irish preparations for Brexit included stockpiling goods.
No, but it's a matter of some concern. The manner in which the negotiations are taking. Obviously, the objective of the Irish government is such that we would wish that the UK, albeit outside of the European family, will have as close as possible a relationship with the European Union. I think there are numerous reasons why that should be the case, but one of geography as much as anything else.
I mean, once you crash out of the European Union, they're going to insist on some sort of border. We can't have a land border in which there's no policing.
Well, I don't, under any circumstances, envisage what you describe as a crash out. A no deal.
We've got plenty of politicians here who do.
Indeed, but a no-deal situation, whether by accident or design, is particularly bad for the European Union. It will be particularly bad for the UK, and of course, will be very bad for Ireland. So I think it's important that both sides move towards an arrangement of some shape and form, because crashing out means, for example, that trade will be along WTO lines. And I can't see how that can accommodate, in any positive way, any business or trading arrangement within the UK.
You must be concerned by the recent upswing in violence in Northern Ireland. Do you think it has anything to do with Brexit?
Undoubtedly. The uncertainty around the border between north-south has given rise to heightened tensions. So I believe it's important in the context of Brexit that the unique circumstances on the island be recognised, but also that the political sensitivities around the arrangements in Ireland, as evidenced by the Good Friday Agreement, are fully maintained.
I mean, power sharing looks frankly as remote as it has at any time in the last months.
This is a time to engage, and that's why this was an important meeting this morning of the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference. Hasn't met for 11 years. The reason it's meeting now is because of both the urgency and the importance of developments on the island of Ireland. The fact that in Northern Ireland there is no government, there is no executive. I am unable to engage from a security perspective with my justice colleague in Northern Ireland because there is no Minister for Justice, because there's always positives in dialogue and talking. And when I look at Northern Ireland now, I'm concerned because nobody is talking. And if people are not talking, that gives rise to vacuums. And unfortunately, the history of Northern Ireland is such that vacuums are often filled by dissidents and people who have no regard for the democratic institutions of the state, resulting in the type of instability that, to my mind, will be particularly challenging and dangerous in the time ahead.
Minister, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.